Howdy folks, Rudrose here, and today, as we are at the start of December, I believe it'll be December 3rd when this video goes up, we are about a month into Whispers in the Well, and since we're about a month in, I wanted to reflect on the legendaries from the set and go over just kind of how they've been performing, which ones have gone up in their stocks, which ones have gone down. Don't have a full tier list or anything, and there are a few other cards that had a lot of potential, like Spooky Sight, that I want to talk about, just how they're doing in the meta, and, a 1 month check-in, if you will. So we're going to start with the legendaries. Rapunzel, while I haven't seen her show up in any competitive lists on ink decks, this card is incredibly potent. So I was attempting to try out the Daisy Duck card, and the only way Daisy seems to even remotely work is if you shift her onto the other smaller Daisy. So I was trying this yellow-blue aggro deck out, and this is a princess build, so it works around the Queen's Censor Court, and it's very strong, potent aggro. It's nice you have cards like Fergus McDuck to give other cards ward. We have really strong new bodyguards, and Mrs. Beakley and Raja, and then the whole princess package works just as normal. Rapunzel is great. Rapunzel supporting Raja, not only giving him a quick power boost, but then he can challenge into something, and he's still protecting you on the crackback for the bodyguard, is fantastic. It's quite strong. I love this card quite a lot. Daisy, on the other hand, not so much. It's like, the theory is you go first, you get to this Daisy, you shift her onto her on turn 4, and now your opponent is essentially always behind on ink. However, if you're going against a blue deck, especially going second, they ramp so far ahead that by the time you would even get to this Daisy shift line, assuming you even see it, it doesn't really even matter. They can still pretty much do anything they want to do. And if you don't shift this card, like, my God, is it slow? Look how slow this card is. She has to be exerted. So this is a turn 6 do nothing card. That's not good. You cannot spend turn 6 playing a card that does absolutely nothing, and we'll go into that on another card that I was super excited about. So yeah, Daisy's a big ol' letdown, even though she has support, so she fits in with the Rapunzel theme if the Rapunzel can stick around, but Rapunzel is genuinely good. I don't know what the premier version of aggro is. You haven't seen Amber Steel aggro crop up in a lot of the top cuts of these tournaments, but I don't know if that's just because it actually is weaker or people just aren't running it right now. They're trying out the other new toys. I think aggro is always going to be a threat. And I think there is really something to this yellow-blue version, especially with a card like Ludwig von Drake, getting the passive lore from the Censor Core. And Rapunzel essentially giving some of your cards just extra protection that now they need additional challengers to get through. Against some decks, they just can't handle that. But there were elements of aggro that, if you opened the Aurora Tiana and they just didn't have that specific answer, they also couldn't handle that. So does this really change anything about it? I don't know. But Rapunzel, at least, is a very interesting card. It's cheap. It's very easy to see how you build around it. You can be creative with it, and it's inkable, which is fantastic. So Rapunzel is a win, even if she doesn't end up making a huge competitive splash this set. I am really pleased with the way Rapunzel has played. She was great in pre-release. The art is really nice, and yeah, I think this card is just really fun, and I hope it gets more support, no pun intended, in the future. However, for her Amber counterpart, the Black Cauldron, this is just terrible. Like, I don't know what they were thinking with this card. The only thing even remotely correct about this card is the theme that, okay, it spits people out of the cauldron like it did in the film. Oh, someone had pointed out you should be able to essentially just generate Cauldron-born off of it. Not that this game has anything like a token in Magic the Gathering, but it should be able to just allow you to put tokens out onto the field. I don't see many people seriously testing this, and why would you? Because look at it. It's first of all, it's uninkable, which is baffling. Why is this uninkable? That makes no sense. Then you have to pay 1, exert it, which you can exert the turn it comes in, put a character card from your discard under this item face up. So even if you played this turn 3, you can't even use it right away. You have to have a character card in your discard at that point. Then you have to pay another ink later to play a character from under this item. Keep in mind, the key part here, you have to pay for that character. So even if you wanted to play something as simple as this Elanwi, a 1-cost character, which is obviously not what your target is for this, but let's say as simple as that, you have to pay 3 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. So that's 6. 6 ink to get an Elanwi on the field. And obviously it goes up and up and up the more cost character you play. Someone once said, hey, if we ever get to this point where games are really dragging out, they're really combo heavy, they go late into the game, this could be something that just lets you keep feeding back characters. Yes, but I think it's in the wrong color for that. Usually the decks that do that are blue or maybe even red in the past. Amber is not a color known for, it's known as the fast color. Amber is not known for drawing the game out and making it extend over and over again. Just the design of this card is just baffling. Maybe something comes out in the future that breaks it and allows you to circumvent all the nonsense that's around it. And imagine, not that anyone's running item hate right now, but imagine if they were, and you stockpiled like 5 cards under here only for them to be like, all right, break it. And all that work was for nothing. Like, just terrible design. And here is something that kind of bugs me about Lorcana in general, is that I actually think Ravensburger, or the Ravensburger design team, I think they have good concepts. I genuinely think they tend to have pretty good concepts, but they're absolutely terrible at executing them. So what if, instead of making this travesty that we see here and wasting a legend slot on this, what if this was a 1 cost and it was inkable, and you had all these, you had to pay 1, but it was restricted. So in order to make it more balanced, because, well, 1 is just too cheap, it's restricted. Okay, you can play a character of cost 3 or less from it. And maybe it's free. Maybe you don't even have to pay the character pay cost still, but you restrict it by, well, it's only characters that are cost 3 or less, or 2 or less, or 1 or less. So again, the concept of it, oh, you've got this cauldron, it revives people, is fine, but this is far too much. So I would have rather seen a tweaked version of, hey, what if it helped you just spam out little characters over and over again, so you can get out this Alonwi easier? Would that have worked? Who knows? But in its current form, it is pretty bad. Moving on to Amethyst, the color many are complaining about right now, and it's easy to see why, because it is the only color that got 2 unequivocally good legendaries. So talking on Demona, pretty much lived up to, I think, what everyone expected it to be. The board-wide exertion is very, very strong. Her stats are really good too, being a 5/6, so she can take a hit from anything that hits for 5. She trades really well with a lot of stuff in the meta. Quest for 2 if she can stick around. And then obviously the hand refill. On occasion, she will like kind of bite you in the butt because she gives your opponent 3 cards in the hand. But I think as long as you play well and you just try to maneuver your way around that, she's still just super strong. And yeah, just overall solid card. Pretty much does everything you would want it to. So I think this one lived up to all the expectations people thought it would. And then Hades, I think, at least in my opinion, has exceeded my expectations. I was a little worried because with his effect, your opponent is always going to choose the best effect for them, right? Which is true. And I know Luke Wonderland was saying on his stream the other day that, well, he didn't really like it because it's a win more card, right? When you're ahead, he really punishes you, because if your opponent has a single character on the board and you have 2 or 3, they can't really afford to get that character off the board because they need to contest your board. However, so they have to give you 2 cards, and that feels pretty solid for you. But if you're behind, if you're going against an aggressive deck, or you're just struggling and they've got 5 characters on the board and you drop a single Hades and your hand is empty, they're not going to let you refill your hand up. They'll be like, yeah, okay, whatever, you take that character. You still now have 4 other characters to deal with. So he is a little more win more, but the fact that he's shown up as much as he has, I think also just shows his power, is that there's not really a downside to him. So it's not even really much of a deal in the sense that you're going to get something out of it. It's either a Dragon Fire, it's just remove something off of the board, or it's draw 2 cards. Both effects are fine. It's not like there's a mode here where he can completely whiff and he does absolutely nothing. He will always become Dragon Fire on a body, or get 2 cards, back into his hand. He's either Dragon Fire on a body or Friends on the other side on a body, and that's a pretty good place to be. And in particular, I think he's quite strong because of how Whispers in the Well is set up with a post-rotation. I think pre-rotation, this card wouldn't have been very good at all, because you have cards like Be Prepared to just wipe the whole board. So you say, yeah, you can take that 1 character because I'll just wipe your board next turn anyway. Or you have locations that, I'm not even going to play characters. I have a bunch of locations out, so your Hades doesn't do anything. But because post-rotation is so challenge-heavy, and the game is still so reliant on challenging characters, and all the lore comes pretty much from the characters, that, yeah, I think that's made Hades really shine. Next is a card I was most excited for and has just been it's such squandered potential. Shere Khan. So, of course, I drew 4 of these, as you can see, from my collection, including a foil one. So it's the only legend I have a full playset of. But, of course, he's just unplayable. I built a deck around him just called Shere Khan, this green-purple list. And the idea was, okay, so if Shere Khan covers your removal, because he essentially removes a card every turn when he quests, we'll pair him with purple. That way we can get some card draw going. And Potion of Malice is a nice way to kind of trigger his effect on the spot. His effect is fantastic. It truly is. It's one of the most unique, coolest effects in the game, where he essentially says, well, just quest, and you take something off the board. And then he automatically sets up something else on the board. What's even better about that is it pairs really well with something like Cheshire Cat, where I've had games, I wiped their last card off the board. You can still then put the damage on one of your own characters. I'll put the damage on one of my own characters. And then let's say next turn they put out 2 cards. So Shere Khan picks off 1. I put the other damage on my Cheshire, and then boom, Cheshire moves the other 2 damage over. So like, it's such a great idea. Like the effect, the on the hunt effect is so strong. Why is this card seeing no play? Because I mentioned it with Daisy. He is a 6-cost do nothing, and he's uninkable, which is baffling. I cannot believe this card was uninkable. I think I talked about this on one of the LCCC streams the other day, and someone was like, no, he'd be broken if he was uninkable. I was like, no, he wouldn't. What are you talking? It is a 6-cost do nothing card. You are paying, and there is no way to cheat that, right? There's no way to give a character the ability to quest the turn it comes in. Maybe if that ever comes out, maybe then there's something here, but the turn you play him, that's it. You put a 5/4 body on the board that does nothing. He's understated for the cost. He gets taken out by Thunderbolt, which feels really bad. Yeah, he's evasive, but he can still get clobbered by a Lexington. Like, and this is turn 6, so most blue decks are going to be like, okay, next turn, Hades, your Shere Khan's gone. It didn't get to do it. You paid 6 for absolutely nothing, and you had this uninkable card junking up your hand. Like, 100% this needed to be inkable, and even then it's probably still wouldn't see play because it's a 6-cost do nothing, and it's such a shame because the effect is great. But, and this is what I meant earlier with Ravensburger, there's a good idea here. This effect is a good idea, and it's ruined by the high cost and the uninkability. What if we took this exact same everything and we brought it down? What if this is a 3-cost card and then you adjust the stats accordingly? Maybe he doesn't quest for 2, maybe he's, just a 3/3 or whatever stats you think are appropriate with the same effect. Now you're more willing to invest into it instead of having to wait till turn 6 for it, right? That's a big difference. So great concept, love the ability, but being a 6-cost do nothing uninkable the turn you play him just absolutely sucks. And just because I brought it up, real quick detour about Iago, he was one of the cards I mentioned. That this card had so much hype when I first saw it. Oh, it's a Daisy counter. It takes out a Daisy in one shot. This card has barely shown up, and every time I've played it, it's felt bad. Why? Because he's essentially just double the price of Rafiki. Some people don't even like Rafiki, understandably, because, yeah, he'll usually get 1 hit in, and then he's just gone. He's such an easy trade. And Iago is the same thing, except you're paying twice the ink. Yeah, I know it's only 2 ink, but when they can guarantee just get him off the board for free, it doesn't feel good. So similar to Shere Khan, investing ink into something that then just doesn't accomplish anything, it's just not worth it. Now, Webby, on the other hand, has been way above my expectations, and I thought it read good, but especially going against blue decks, man, does she punish blue decks so hard. That free ramp, I've seen Webby players not even ink for turn just because, I'm getting the free ramp, I don't need to. And the ward. It was so easy to overlook the ward because it's such a tiny word here amongst all this other text. But the amount of times I'm like, okay, I'll just hit it with Thunderbolt. Oh, nope, I can't. And early, you don't always have a lot of 4, something that hits for 4, unless you're running like Lexington and Steel. There's not a whole lot that does that. Maybe that Iago I just mentioned. So Webby has been really, really good. She does feel a lot weaker when you're going first, and she's not nearly as strong into the blue deck. So I do kind of wonder where she'll land overall, because she's one of those cards that in the right situation, she genuinely feels busted. And you're like, this card is unfair. But then there's other situations where you're like, well, yeah, maybe not so good. But she's inkable, right? Look at the difference here. Because she's inkable, you can afford to run 4 of her in your deck, as well as 4 of the 1-cost shift line, because in the situation she's not good, you just tuck her into the inkwell. That is the difference between so many of these cards even seeing play versus staying in the binder. They need to be inkable so that when you have those games that this is not the right game for Webby, she's not just stuck in your hand and you're screwed. And that's something I think Ravensburger misses a lot. A card needs to do something truly special and powerful to be uninkable, in my opinion. And there's way too many cards that they just slap with this uninkable label and just go, yep, it's uninkable just because. Speaking of which, here we have Hercules, the mighty leader. Again, it's very similar to Shere Khan. I think this card has a cool concept. And this one has actually seen some play. It's gone with the Ruby Amethyst decks. 5/3, cannot be dealt damage unless he's being challenged. He has to be the one being attacked. If he's doing the challenging, he still can't be dealt damage. Very resilient against the steel decks, even quest for 2 lore, which is nice. And then while he's exerted, whether you've quested him or challenged, other hero characters can't be dealt damage unless they're being challenged. So he works well with some of the red Ruby Amethyst cards, like this Sisu, like this Elsa, these cards that just have the hero tag that maybe never mattered before, but now suddenly the Hercules makes a difference. So really cool card, much better than Shere Khan because he only costs 4. I do think, again, I don't think this needed to be uninkable. I don't think it's that strong. And in particular, once he gets his 1 challenge off, which is good, every instance I've seen, and I've seen him in the LCCC games too, he just immediately gets banished right after that. He immediately just, oh, okay, well, he only has 3 willpower, so we'll just run right back in and smack him. Still, cool card. You've seen in some of these Ruby Amethyst builds that some people are only running one of them. Some people have gone in on a full 4. They're really trying to build around him. He does seem ultimately not worth building like around fully, but maybe there's at least something here. So he's a neat idea. I don't think he needed to be uninkable, especially with this stat line, but here we are. Horseman, probably one of my favorite cards from the set, just based on the art alone. I'm a big fan of forward motion, so anytime you can see something like coming towards you, like the pumpkin head here, it looks awesome. This card is pretty much a staple in red-purple decks. Baker was actually telling me after his LCCC match the other day that Horseman is the reason this deck is even playable now. And Horseman is very good. I do like him. Brawl on a body, never a bad effect. There are times, I've had games where, based on what your opponent's playing, he has no targets. He has nothing to hit, and then because he's uninkable, he's junking up your hand. I also just think his willpower is kind of insulting. Like, could he have at least been 3? I think he could have been a 4/3. The fact that an Elsa can exert him and take him out and still live to tell the tale, it just feels so bad that he can just get bopped by a single Elsa. Gathering Strength is a really nice bonus effect. There are times that it really matters, especially in these red-purple lists where, now because I've buffed the board enough, plus with my Lumiere, this Peter Pan is suddenly hitting for 3 or 4 or 5, so he's a cool effect. Another one, did he need to be uninkable? Maybe. Like, if you look at the history of Lorcana, yes, he did, because, Medusa was uninkable, and she essentially does a similar thing, and not Brawl, Dragonfire was uninkable, but I don't think he needed to be, especially with this stat line. Like, if they'd given him an extra willpower, I could have maybe seen it then, but him being able to be taken out by Elsa really feels bad. Nonetheless, clearly a good card, clearly effective in these Ruby Amethyst lists. Daisy Duck, just too slow, but at least it's inkable. Cinderelli. Cinderelli, did she live up to her potential? Well, she, this one, again, I kind of understand it being uninkable. It's funny that as good as this card is, and has clearly lived up to its hype, there are times I actually do think it feels bad to play. If you draw it later in the game, and you don't have a lot of cards in hand, or any cards in hand, she actually doesn't do anything. You just play her, you have nothing you can put in hand for the draw, and that's it. Or there's times where the one card you have in hand is a Hades or some key card you need to combat your opponent's board, and you can't afford to give it up to the Cinderella. So there are times I think this card does actually hurt you, and she isn't an inkable. However, when you can turn 2 ramp with Tipo, Sail, 1 jump, whatever, turn 3 play Cinderella and get that spare Tipo or maybe even another copy of Cinderella out of your hand and then draw off of it, like, the ramp it gives you feels really good. And then you have this 4-cost singer on the board if you have a You're Welcome or any of those 4-cost songs. And I got to see this in one of Ed Chu's match in the LCCC. He had 3 Cinderella on board, and because she triggers herself 3 times in a row, he got to essentially dig for his combo, for his Malicious Mean Scary Prince Philip combo. And the way they trigger, because they trigger one at a time, it's like, okay, draw, put the worst card in my hand into the inkwell, draw. Oh, this card I drew is the worst card in my hand now. Put that one in the inkwell for the next trigger, draw. Oh, and this one's the worst card in my hand. Put that one into the inkwell for the next trigger, draw. Like, the way it can stack like that is super powerful. So I do still think this card is quite incredible. She's clearly dropped off a lot on TCG players, so maybe some people are realizing she's not the be-all, end-all she was. I do think you have to use her a bit intelligently. I don't think you can just jam her out at all times, but clearly very powerful, especially when used in the right situation. Steel gets an incredible card in Goliath. This is pretty much the reason the blue steel decks can function, because it gives them a way to dump their hand out and then keep refilling it turn after turn. Kind of like a little mini whole new world. And then it affects your opponents too. I've never, people always talked about, oh, this could really hurt your opponent. These purple decks, they draw all these cards. And then you drop Goliath and you go, haha, now you'll have to discard a bunch of cards. I have very rarely seen that happen. Usually the opponent just goes, oh, I do? Okay. And they'll just vomit out a bunch of cards on the board, which is pretty safe in an era where Be Prepared doesn't exist. And all the board wipes are combos and all these pieces. So he's very good in that specific scenario. I don't know if he really has a home outside of Sapphire Steel. I kind of wish he was a 6/6, like a 6 for 6/6. I think that would have been fair. Maybe they wanted him to trade with Demona. Oh, get it? It's thematic. Goliath and Demona take each other out. I think he could have been a 6/6, but whatever. He's fine as it is, and he does his job well. I don't like this art for Goliath. I really don't like this outfit and this uniform he's wearing. So it's a shame because he's such a great character in the show, and I really dislike this art. But nonetheless, the card's clearly effective for what it does. Unlike Prince Charming, which has seen absolutely no play, and why would it? Once again, we have a good concept here. I love the idea of a massively willpower statted bodyguard, and this protective that each character can only challenge, each turn only one character can challenge. It's such a cool effect. The problem being he costs so much, by the time this comes onto the field, that's when you're just getting Hades, or you're just getting blasted by something else. And because he's so expensive, you're likely going to be behind when he hits the field. Surely like a Sapphire Steel deck's the only deck that can even play him. This effect is needed in an aggro deck. You need to be able to drop this on turn 3 so that they have to deal with the Prince Charming, but they can only send one person in to deal with him. If you're behind and you drop this guy, you're hurting yourself. You've cut off your own ability to challenge and come back. I do like that he has the steel symbol on the shield. That's really cool. Again, cool art, and the concept makes sense, but it's way too expensive. I would have much rather seen a 3-cost version of this with, and he's a 1/5 or whatever stat line is appropriate for that to help protect the aggro decks. I think that would have been a cool concept, but as he currently is, he's just unplayable. Finally, just wanted to touch on a few cards that I think have made an impact on the meta, or maybe we thought they would and they wouldn't. Raja, good bodyguard, just really good stats for a bodyguard. Shanti in some of those amber green singer decks. Having 5 health means it doesn't get blasted by Thunderbolt, and 2 lures, just super nice on a Singer 5. Mowgli, there are so many times Mowgli doesn't hit what he needs to hit, but for lack of better options, he's solid because we lack better options. Mickey is probably the best and most consistent champion. If you have to challenge your way out of a situation, the extra willpower he gives characters is a real pain in the butt, so yeah, he's very strong. Demona's very solid as a challenger. She's just such a big beater. But Stone by Day in general, I think, is a little more damaging than we maybe first thought it was, especially because you want to be drawing cards. So if you're not drawing cards, it's like, yeah, your character's ready, but that also means you're just kind of stuck top decking. Elsa, I haven't seen anyone using because I think there's just better card draw to use at this point, other than old, kind of bad Maleficent. Like, I actually wish she was still the 2/2. Olaf, I've seen some people experimenting with in the right situation. He seems incredibly strong. Outside of that, there are ways to get him off the board to your advantage. So will he stand the test of time? No idea. Ursula, I haven't seen a ton of play, but I think she's still super strong and she's good. Cheshire Cat is an absolute beast. This card is absolutely exceeding my original expectations, and the ability to just manipulate over and over and over again. Yeah, this card is wildly good. Friends on an item. That's what should be called, friends on the item side. Obviously, just very good. This is what I expected. I really like the Grimorum. We'll see if it sees widespread play. Webby's, of course, good for the shift line. Flynn's been pretty solid in the green decks. The boost becoming a 3/2. The quest for 2 is really solid. Mega's seen some play. Scrooge is pretty decent. I like him. The Aquila, I've seen the potential of this card. I don't know how much I've seen the boost matter, but sometimes just having the 5 willpower really does make a difference. Goofy, I remember there was a lot of fear when this card first came out, but I haven't seen him once. What else do we have? Malicious Mean is scary, is just kind of dumb. I really actually don't like the design of this card. I think it should deal a point of damage to each opposing character. The fact that it just puts a counter on them and that gets around resist is stupid. Like, Calhoun should not fall prey to this card. A Calhoun should be able to sit there through the Malicious Mean Scary and Prince Philip combo. So absolutely resist should work on this. The fact that, to my knowledge, there is nothing in the game that avoids this. And resist should have been a counterplay. It should have been, hey, I have a resist character, so you can't do this. So I hate that design. Other than that, it's, whatever. It just makes the Prince Philip combo a lot more consistent because it's within the same color as long as you have green. But I really hate just putting a damage counter on everything. Diablo is, it's kind of crazy to me this card is as powerful as it is, but I guess that's just the meta we're in post-rotation, because it's just a Smee, an uninkable Smee, but clearly that's good enough right now because he's strong. Peter Pan's seen some play. Bronx was really fun in pre-release, but I haven't seen anyone try him outside that, and probably just because he gets frozen all the time. Xanatos has a clear top end. Horseman we already know is good. I would like to see a Sleepy Hollow build with this get to safety, maybe bring back the racetrack, but haven't really seen anyone using it. I don't really see anyone using these blue cards. Yeah, none of these have made much of an impact. The Scar is probably just too expensive, too easy to manipulate. I've heard some people messing around with the Kristoff, especially if you can like bounce. People are always trying to bounce the boosted characters back to their hands so they can get a bunch of cards out of it. Spooky Sight and Sudden Scare. Sudden Scare actually is pretty solid in like a Blurple list. Sometimes you just need spot removal, and so to have inkable spot removal, yeah, it ramps them a bunch and that sucks, but that's good. Spooky Sight, I think they 100% missed the mark on, other than the art, which is absolutely excellent. Both the enchanted version, which is just looks so good, and this version where they're all running away and you get the rope and the nets. Like, the art is fantastic, but the effect, the card, like, it has a good intention, but it's so bad. So I want to show a little comparison here. Look at, I've always compared Hades and Maleficent from Chapter 1, right? Both these cards do something very similar. They essentially are spot removal to get a character off the field. Stat-wise, Hades has a combined 9 in his stats. Maleficent has 12. So she costs 2 more, and he's 2 cheaper. But they both immediately remove a character from the board. You'd think, well, Hades is always better, right? Well, the difference being Hades is uninkable, and Hades puts it into the inkwell, which does technically help them, whereas Maleficent is a straight banish. However, as the game has gone on and we've gotten revival effects, sometimes the inkwell is actually better because now they can't revive it off of a Circle of Life or any other card that pulls cards out of the discard. But still, okay, 7 cost, uninkable, cost 2 less than the inkable version, but, straight banish. Now look at Be Prepared versus Spooky Sight. If you were to put these side by side, technically, Spooky Sight should have cost 5, not the 7. 7 is Be Prepared's version of Maleficent, just wipes out everything. Spooky Sight does the same thing, but hits the board with the inkwell. But the problem being, especially, Spooky Sight only hits characters with cost 3 or less. And it's only 1 less than Be Prepared, which is just baffling. This card basically doesn't see play. Why? Because you can't afford to run it. Because there are too many decks and too many situations. This card doesn't do anything. It doesn't, against a Blurple matchup, what does it hit? Even against Amber, or against Amethyst Steel, there's a lot it can hit, but based on the board state, as you get into those later turns, if they have Genie and Dumbo and Elsa out, this doesn't hit anything. What about Sapphire Steel? Emerald Sapphire? This card does nothing. And because it's uninkable, like I touched on earlier, people can't run it. They can't afford to run it, and with no sideboard, they can't slot it in for the few matches it would be good in, because there are so many matches it's just dead in. Like, it needed to be, I think this absolutely needed to be inkable. I don't understand, especially if it was going to have this kind of restriction. And the ramping here really is a big difference versus Hades ramping you 1. I have used this against the Amber Emerald Dogs deck, like that Sing Circle of Life. And that deck relies on Singing Circle of Life to bring out these big cost characters. Well, when you ramp their board by 5, 6 ink, which I've seen happen, which has happened in games I've played, now they go, oh, I have 8, 7, 9 ink now. I'll just play my Prince Philip outright. I'll play my Clarabelle outright. Thank you for all that. Like, it backfires on you. I used it against an Emerald Amethyst deck because they went so wide. It was my only choice. It's the only thing that affects the board in that way. And they just went, oh, sweet, I've got 9 ink now. Here, I'll just jam out a 4 cost and a 3 cost and a 2 cost next turn. Thank you for letting me just spam the board out. Like, they really botched this card, which is a shame because the game did need something like this. And it is solid against some of the aggro decks, but again, it's like that Dogs deck. It just backfires on you. So real shame with this card. Last 3 cards I'll mention are Steel Lexington is pretty much everything we've wanted him to be. He's very solid. He was a clear replacement for like the Dragon Genie. Really good at beating up on genies. Hurled as Thunderbolt is just, it makes me miss Zeus so much. The difference between 4 and 5 is massive. There are so many targets that you're just like, man, if only this hit for 1 more, if it only hit for 5. And Zeus was a very fair card, so I don't know why we have, for all the stuff we've power crept in this set, I don't know why we decided to make this weaker. The Deity Challengers thing, like, maybe it'll come up once in a Blue Moon in a Sapphire Steel deck, but that pretty much doesn't matter. So just, this card, just every time I play it, I'm like, I miss. And then along came Zeus, which is a better name for a card anyway. And then finally, Headless Horseman. I do not like this card at all. This is not a Rudrose card. And it's just incredibly swingy, and I've seen it be swingy in very good ways. I've seen it blast cards for 10 damage, and it took the best cards out of their hand and just completely wins you the game. And then there's other times it forces you to lose a bunch of cards that you wanted to hold on to, and then didn't even do any damage or did 2 damage, which doesn't matter. So it's like, but if you look at the other high-cost Steel Sapphire cards that you would want to run in this deck, they're terrible. They either don't exist or they're terrible. So you kind of have to run Horseman just because there's not a whole lot of other choice, but this is not a me type of card at all, but it's clearly seeing some play. And there we go. Those are some of my thoughts halfway in. Let me know which cards have really stood out for you or which ones have kind of dropped below the bar and you're like, I wish it had done better. I appreciate you watching so much. If you haven't already, feel free to like and subscribe. And until next time, take care.